or shut the hell up. That's what it boils down to. It is election day in many places all across the country. Of course, we have elections in Virginia where Democrats are trying to hold on to the state house. Republicans want to increase the number of gubernatorial mansions they control from 34 to 35. Also in New Jersey, Democrats are trying to take it back from Republican Chris Christie. You also have mayoral races taking place in Atlanta, and where, of course, Mary Norwood, Shermichael Singleton says she's a Republican. She's saying, oh, no, I'm an independent. Not true, huh, Shermichael?
Look, I've known her for a long time, and she's always been a Republican. There's nothing wrong with it.
I got you, but she won't admit it. So, of course, the Atlanta mayoral race, she could become the first white mayor in Atlanta in 40 years. Of course, Maynard Jackson was the first elected in 1973, but Keisha Lance Bottoms has zoomed to the top of the polls there. There are some 12 people running, so of course there will be a runoff there, but still the top two will go to that runoff. You also have the Minneapolis-St. Paul, Minnesota mayoral race, Keva Levy-Pounds, former president of the NAACP. She wants to be the next mayor of Minneapolis. Of course, the incumbent there is facing a lot of challenges. And of course, you have St. Paul, Minnesota as well, a mayoral race. And of course, in Flint, Michigan, Karen Weevil is a recall election there. She's trying to hold on to her seat. Folks are not happy as a result of what took place in the Flint water crisis. So lots of elections. So here's the deal, folks. I know it might be raining in your city. I don't care. You still should be voting today. I don't care if it's a little chilly as well, because the bottom line is we must step out there and exercise our right to vote. We want to chat with this with our panel. Shermichael Singleton, political analyst, Republican political consultant, Singleton Strategies, Wendy Osefo, political analyst and professor of education at Johns Hopkins University, Faraji Muhammad, host of Listen Up, WEAA 88.9 FM in Baltimore. Local. I keep telling people you can be fixated on Washington, D.C., who is in the White House and the House and Senate, but the reality is more people are impacted by what happens in their city council races and their state races than what happens in D.C.
Yep. I think this is the beginning for and I agree with you right there, Brother Roland. My thing is, if you're not getting out to vote in these off season or off year or these midterm elections, you really are not you truly aren't being an informed citizen. But here's the thing: if you go out to vote, you got to make sure that you define what accountability looks like. What does that mean for your community, for your city, for your state? And you got to start the process of organizing. We're in a very, very highly sensitive political space that you can't just talk about voting without some additional action afterwards, or you can't talk about voting without really being truly informed, not listening to sound bites, but being truly informed.
Here's the deal. So we finally got our iPad working. So Shelley, I want to play this here. And so I was archiving in my video last night, and I came across this when Kerry Washington was speaking at this brunch, perennial sponsored along with Essence Magazine. It was at the 2008 inauguration of President Obama. And she made a point which I think is still so relevant today. So Shelley, go right ahead.
You know, I think Barack Obama is a child of the world. With a white mother and an African father, grew up in Kansas and then Hawaii and then overseas. He represents the full spectrum of who we are on this planet. And I'm always reminding people that this is a step forward for all people all over the globe. I don't know about you guys, but on election night, I got emails from Europe, from Africa, from Asia. Don't ask me who I know in all those places. But I do. And so I acknowledge that this is not about a black guy being president. This is not just about that. But I also acknowledge that it feels really good to be with family on this first afternoon that I'm here in D.C. So thank you so much. And I just want to say really quickly that remember that a few days from now, when you have taken your gowns and hung them up and wiped off all your makeup and thank God gotten out of the shoes, remember that this is when the real work has to begin.
That's right.
That the reason he got to where he is because he inspired each of us to look within and ask ourselves, how can I be a better American? That cannot stop. He is where he is because of us. He can only be who he is because of us. So take off your stilettos and put on your marching boots. Thank you.
And that, to me, I think is the key. What drives me crazy is when people say, oh, I did my part, I voted. No. What happens today is the end of one process and the beginning of another.
Absolutely. I think that that's just really a salient point. And as a member of Alpha Kappa Alpha Sorority Incorporated, they always tell you that the real work begins.
What they got to do with Karen Washington? That ain't got nothing to do.
Yes, it does. I had to give a shout out.
Karen ain't no AKA.
The real work begins after you become a member, right? That's what they always tell you. And I think that that whole level of accountability for our elected officials is really important. We have to be mindful of why they got in office. You also have to be mindful of the public policy issues within your communities that you want to see them address. And let me just say this one point. I really need people to go out to vote because you don't understand. If voting wasn't important, you wouldn't have so many people trying to keep you from doing it.
Republicans.
So you wouldn't have people trying to suppress your vote if it did not move the needle in some way in your lives and in the lives of your family. So let's make sure we all go out to vote.
All right, sure, Michael.
People should be informed before they vote. I'm just being honest, because otherwise you elect a bunch of folks who don't know what they're doing.
I'm sorry, you mean
extremist views.
You mean like the Trump voters who put Trump in?
I mean voters in general.
You mean like the Trump voters who put Trump in?
Voters in general.
Because clearly they were not informed. I'm sorry, they were informed, but they didn't care.
We want people to vote. I think that's critically important, but I also think, to your point, people have a responsibility of knowing who they're voting for, the policies that these people represent, and that's Republican and Democrat.
Yeah, like the people who voted for Trump.
Weekdays on TV One.
I will never lie to you.
Oh my God.
Roland Martin.
He doesn't want to talk to us. He wants to ignore us.
Uncensored.
Hell no. That ain't gonna cut it, boo.
Unapologetic.
No, that is fundamentally false. You are wrong.
Unfiltered.
He wants an America where we all look alike. He ain't talking about black people.
Unrelenting.
You better go work out, because you got a fight on your hands.
NewsOne Now with Roland Martin. Weekdays at 7 a.m. on TV One.